There are truths that dwell in silence and others that roar beneath the surface of what we believe to be ordinary. In the delicate space between the sacred and the mundane, there lives a question, unspoken, persistent, like a whisper beneath the breath of time. Why did a holy man warn us about the presence of cats? And why does his voice still echo when we gaze into the eyes of a creature so ancient, so enigmatic? St. John Paul II, known for his unwavering devotion and mystical clarity, once hinted at things not entirely of this world. He walked with the weight of divine insight and the humility of a servant, yet there were moments when his gaze turned inward, to dimensions unseen, to energies felt rather than spoken. And in one of those rare glimpses, he offered a cryptic reflection about cats. Not condemnation, not fear, but a warning wrapped in love. As if he had touched something many overlook, something subtle. He spoke not as a man against the feline, but as a soul aware of the delicate vibrational codes woven through presence, form, and intention. Cats are not simply pets. They are observers, energy weavers, gatekeepers of thresholds beyond the human eye. And to one attuned to frequencies of higher consciousness, their energy, while majestic, can disrupt the unprepared. In their silence there is power. In their stare a challenge, in their stillness a mirror of our unexamined truths. Perhaps this was his message. Do not live unconsciously in the presence of what you do not yet understand. And so we ask, what happens to the energetic field of a home when an ancient soul in feline form enters? What dialogues are happening behind the veil, while we sleep, while we pray, while we love? To ignore this would be to walk blindfolded through sacred terrain. Si estas palabras ya tocaron tu alma, suscríbete al canal y comparte en los comentarios. ¿Qué vibración sientes ahora dentro de ti? Ahora, vamos continuar. In the early centuries of spiritual devotion, long before the cathedrals echoed with chants and incense, the mystics of the desert walked alone. The desert fathers, seekers of solitude, vessels of divine silence, retreated into barren lands not to escape the world, but to meet it in its purest form. Among them, animals wandered freely. Some monks claimed the feline would stare for hours into empty corners, as if guarding portals or engaging with entities unseen. One elder spoke of waking in the night to find a cat sitting atop his chest, eyes locked to his own. Not hostile, not warm, simply present, watching, as if reading the soul, as if reminding him of a contract signed before birth. St. John Paul II was not born in the desert, but he inherited its spiritual lineage. In his contemplations, he echoed the wisdom of those ancient seekers. He understood that spiritual environments are fragile, easily altered by the presence of forces we do not fully comprehend. And while he never commanded avoidance, he suggested awareness. Cats can be amplifiers. If your home is filled with peace, they enhance it. But if your mind harbors unrest, doubt, or spiritual dissonance, the feline may echo it back, louder, sharper, unavoidable. This is not superstition, it is vibration. The saints and mystics, from Egypt to Assisi, taught us to live consciously, to observe what enters our space, physical or ethereal. The home is not just shelter, it is a temple. And what you allow into it becomes part of your inner sanctuary. Perhaps that was the true warning, not against the cat, but against unconscious invitation. Every being you share your life with becomes a reflection of your inner terrain. And when the mirror has claws and moves without sound, will you be ready to see what it reveals? Everything speaks in vibration. Long before words were shaped into sound, the universe was already singing, through movement, light, and intention. Animals, unlike humans, never stepped away from this primordial language. They listen not with ears, but with the whole body. They do not argue, they harmonize or withdraw. Among all creatures, the cat is a master of this subtle symphony. It walks through dimensions, responding to shifts in energy before they manifest in matter. Have you noticed how a cat may suddenly rise and leave the room, not because of noise, but because of an unseen disturbance? Or how it curls into your lap, not to seek warmth, but to recalibrate your field? St. John Paul II knew that those walking the path of light must remain vigilant not only to visible distractions, but also to energetic distortions. He did not fear the animal realm, quite the opposite. He revered it, but reverence, in its truest form, includes discernment. And cats, with their ancient wisdom and deep attunement, require exactly that. They are not guardians in the way a dog is. They are gatekeepers, choosing when and to whom they reveal their full essence. They absorb, transmit, and reflect. And if your inner world is fragmented, the feline presence might not soothe. It might amplify the disharmony. This is the vibrational paradox. What brings clarity to one may destabilize another. A cat in a sacred home can become a co-guardian of peace, a sentinel of silence. But in a space clouded by emotional residue or spiritual confusion, it may begin to act erratically, not out of malice, but in resonance. Cats do not lie. They embody the truth of their environment, without filter, without fear. John Paul II's warning may have been less about the animal and more about us, our readiness, our depth, our sensitivity to what we invite into our inner sanctum. When you choose to live spiritually, you choose to feel more. And everything that enters your field, even a silent gaze in the night, becomes part of your awakening. The question is not, should I have a cat? It is, am I aware of what a cat sees in me? In the fabric of quantum reality, observation is not passive. It alters. It defines. The very act of watching collapses infinite probabilities into one chosen path. This truth, once confined to laboratories and equations, now whispers through spiritual insight. We are not separate from what we observe. We are entangled. Cats, in their stillness, carry this quantum essence. They do not merely look. They observe with presence so dense it shapes the energy around them. Every flick of their tail, every blink, is an act of alignment or resistance. They are not watching you, they are watching into you. St. John Paul II, immersed in prayer and metaphysical reflection, sensed the subtle weight of observation, not just from heaven but from all sentient consciousness that coexists with us. He understood that some beings are placed in our lives not to comfort, but to awaken. In the feline, he saw an observer, not of behavior, but of essence. And here lies the paradox. We invite cats into our homes as companions, yet we rarely question what they perceive. What thoughts do they echo? What energies do they absorb? Do they see the thoughts behind our smiles? The grief beneath our silence? In many esoteric traditions, cats are said to guard liminal spaces, the thresholds between worlds, between sleep and waking, spirit and form. Their gaze can follow energies we cannot name. Their body, a tuning fork for invisible frequencies. And so the Pope's words were never about superstition. They were about responsibility. About recognizing that to walk with a cat is to be seen by something that cannot be deceived. It's not a warning of danger. It's a call to integrity. Because in the presence of a quantum observer, all masks fall away. To have a cat in your home is to invite a mirror that does not blink at illusion. And if you are willing, that mirror can help you dissolve what is false, gently, unrelentingly. This is the essence of mystical companionship, not comfort alone, but transformation. What collapses in your field when the eyes of an ancient observer rest upon your soul? Look closer at the way a cat moves. There is no waste, no hesitation, no dissonance. Each step, each stretch, each pause is a perfect expression of sacred geometry in motion. Spirals, lines, angles, all in fluid harmony. They are not just graceful. They are mathematically precise, as if embodying a code left behind by the architects of the universe. Mystics have long observed that divine intelligence is not random. It is ordered, intricate, and pulsing with meaning. In cats, this order becomes visible, the way they curl into a golden ratio, the symmetry of their face, the alignment of their spine during rest. Nothing is accidental, all is designed. St. John Paul II once spoke of divine design, not only in scripture but in creation, in the way nature holds patterns of holiness. He believed that to see God was to witness his signature in the details. And cats, to him, may have embodied one such signature, subtle, exact, vibrationally intact. But sacred form does not always mean harmless. Energy can be beautiful and still disruptive. A crystal, if misused, can fracture light and disorient. A tone, if sounded without awareness, can stir the soul prematurely. And a cat, if not met with conscious presence, can unravel more than it soothes, because their bodies hold codes, and those codes respond. If your home resonates with sacred intent, the feline becomes a companion of alignment, attuning your space, sensing imbalances, anchoring quiet power. But if your field is fractured, the same being may stir chaos, not as punishment, but as reflection. You see, beauty in the spiritual realm is not passive, it awakens, it reveals, and anything that reveals must also confront. So the question is not whether cats are divine, they are. The question is whether we are prepared to engage with that divinity in form. St. John Paul II's veiled caution may have been this: be mindful of what vibrational codes you activate through proximity, and above all, be honest about the state of your inner temple. For when sacred geometry walks beside you, your own misalignments are no longer hidden. They rise, they echo, they demand harmonization. Will you listen? There are places where the veil is thin, where the seen and unseen brush against each other like silk in the wind. Thresholds, doorways, dreams, and sometimes the eyes of a cat. To live with such a being is to live with a portal. Not metaphorical, real. St. John Paul II, steeped in mysticism, understood that reality is layered, that what we perceive is but a fraction of what is. His teachings often hinted at an invisible architecture, a scaffolding of spirit holding the world together. Within that architecture, animals played roles, each with a purpose, but the cat was something else. In many spiritual traditions, cats are said to stand watch between dimensions. Their sudden darting gaze, their fixations on corners of the room, their midnight wanderings, these are not quirks. They are interactions. With whom or with what is not always ours to know, but we feel it. Have you ever awakened in the night to find your cat staring into darkness, not afraid, not alert, just attuned? As if bearing witness to something you are not yet ready to see. That is the veil. And the veil does not separate opposites, it binds them. Life and death, matter and spirit, thought and manifestation. The cat, unlike most creatures, lives within this in-between, neither fully here nor fully there, a soft-footed bridge. This is why St. John Paul II's reflection mattered. He recognized that some presences, though pure, can open gateways that the soul must be ready to walk through. A cat in the home is not just a pet, it's an invitation to depth, a reminder that what you sense is real, that your intuition is not illusion, that your reality may be nested within greater realities still. But such gifts come with responsibility. You must tend your space. You must cleanse your thoughts. You must honor the unseen as much as the visible, for when the veil is thin and the gatekeeper lives among you, the sacred is no longer a concept. It becomes a daily presence. And in that presence, you will be asked one thing: are you truly awake? Stillness is not the absence of motion, it is the presence of everything in perfect balance. In the cat, stillness becomes visible, an embodied silence so complete it draws you inward, not into sleep, but into awareness, into the space behind your thoughts, into the place where the soul remembers. St. John Paul II often spoke of silence not merely as a practice, but as a sacrament, a gateway through which God speaks most clearly. And what creature understands silence better than the feline? It does not need to fill space, it becomes the space. Its stillness is not passive, it is mirroring. Sit with a cat long enough, and you will meet yourself, not the version you present to others, the deeper one beneath masks and language, the one that flickers in dreams and lingers in prayer. Cats, in their quiet presence, Invite that version forward. And sometimes that truth is not easy to behold, because silence also reveals unrest. The cat curls into a spiral of stillness, and suddenly your own restlessness becomes deafening. It watches, and your unspoken grief rises. It blinks, and memories you had buried begin to stir. This is not coincidence. This is design. Felines do not entertain. They reflect. Their stillness is the mirror that does not move even when you do. And in that sacred reflection, transformation begins, but only if you're willing to remain, to stay in the gaze, to feel the discomfort, to breathe through the revelation. This is the alchemy St. John Paul II hinted at. Not an outer warning, but an inner invitation. If you dare to be seen by stillness, you will no longer be able to hide from yourself. And that, perhaps, is why he cautioned the unaware. Because to live beside a feline presence is to live beside a spiritual accelerator. It does not force, it waits, it does not ask, it reveals. And in that revelation, there is either awakening or retreat. So ask yourself, can you meet the mirror without fear? Can you dwell in stillness without fleeing into noise? Because when the cat watches in silence, it is not judging you. It is calling you home. There exists a communion that precedes language, older than ritual, deeper than belief. It happens in glances, in breath, in shared space, between beings who do not speak the same tongue, but who recognize the soul in one another. This is the space where true connection is born, sacred, quiet, undeniable. St. John Paul II, though a man of words and proclamations, often returned to this deeper communion. He wrote of creation not as a possession of humanity, but as a mystical dialogue, one in which animals were not excluded, but honored as participants. To him, every creature carried a spark, a message, a unique vibration in the grand symphony of the divine. And cats? Their role in that symphony is subtle but potent. They do not seek approval. They do not obey commands. They respond to energy, to presence, to authenticity. When a cat chooses to sit beside you, it is not out of training, but out of resonance. Something in your field aligns, something silent speaks. This communion is fragile. It cannot be forced. It requires a surrender of dominance, of ego, of noise. The feline meets you only when you meet yourself. John Paul II understood the cost of disconnection, the spiritual poverty that arises when we forget the living web of which we are part. His reflections, particularly those whispered rather than declared, were often about the restoration of this sacred bond, about returning to a way of being that listens more than it speaks, receives more than it controls. To live with a cat is to practice this communion daily, to let go of agenda, to attune, to open to presence without expectation. And in return, you are offered something rare, a moment of union with consciousness that is not human, but equally divine. This is why his warning was not about danger, but about depth. He was pointing toward a relationship that demands reverence. Not superstition, but sacred attention. Not avoidance, but awareness. Because when two beings meet beyond species, beyond form, beyond thought, what is left is truth. Wordless, timeless, whole. And once you've tasted that kind of communion, nothing else satisfies. At the heart of every spiritual journey lies the return, not to a distant heaven, but to the temple within. That sacred space behind the ribs, beneath the breath, where silence speaks and presence listens. It is here that the true revelations arrive, not in thunder, but in still recognition. And sometimes, it is a cat that leads us there. St. John Paul II was a guardian of temples, stone ones, yes, but also the invisible sanctuaries within the human soul. His life was a testament to the mystery of incarnation, that the divine chooses to dwell in form, to hide in simplicity, to whisper through the ordinary. And what is more ordinary, more overlooked, than a sleeping cat on a windowsill? Yet this ordinary vessel holds secrets. A cat lives not in the future or the past. It is a living oracle of presence. It does not try to be, it simply is. And in that being it reflects the deepest invitation. Come home to yourself. The Pope's words, cryptic to some, were always laced with mystical depth. His warning about cats was never about fear. It was about awareness, about treating the seemingly mundane as a potential portal, about not dismissing what we cannot yet explain. For those who seek awakening, the path is not paved only with light. It is paved with mirrors, with echoes, with moments that crack the shell of the familiar. And the feline presence, and so still, so strange, so sovereign, may become one such moment, if you allow it. To share space with a cat is to be reminded daily that something beyond logic is always watching, that the veil is thin, that communion is near, that silence is alive. So tend your inner temple. Sweep its floors, light its incense. Welcome only that which honors the sacredness you carry. And if a cat enters, watch how it walks, how it pauses, how it chooses, because its choice may not be random. It may be the divine, in fur and breath, asking, "Are you ready to see yourself as you truly are?" In the end, St. John Paul II did not warn against cats. He warned against unconsciousness. And in that his words remain prophetic.